Welcome, everyone, to Fixable, a podcast from TED. I'm your host, Ann Morris. I'm a company builder and leadership coach.
And I'm your co-host, Frances Fry. I'm a Harvard Business School professor, and I'm Ann's wife.
Frances, it's a very special show. Today, we're talking to the wonderful Leisha, Hailey, and Kate Moennig. For those of you out there familiar with the L word, you may know them as the iconic characters and best friends on the show, Alice and Shane. Alice and Shane, it turns out, are also best friends in real life. Leisha and Kate met on the set of the L Word 20 years ago. They've been friends ever since, and we've invited them on the show today because they've continued to collaborate in really interesting ways long after the show's incredible run. They host an excellent podcast called Pants, and they just wrote a book together called So Gay for You: Friendship, Found Family, and the Show That Started It All. It can be a beautiful thing working with a best friend, but it can, of course, also get messy, which is one of the things we're going to get into with Leisha and Kate today.
Oh, I look forward to it.
Leisha, Hailey, and Kate Moennig, welcome to Fixable.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
The Smart Podcast.
I know, we're excited. We were talking earlier on the telephone, and we were like, are we going to be able to handle this?
Yeah.
The bar's going to be very low.
Oh, thank God.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So it'll get
That's
onto
when
our
we like
level.
to show up.
Yeah. That's where we can really shine.
Yeah. This is a show about work, so we're going to start there. Gallup did this research with this headline that was kind of shocking to corporate America, that if you have a best friend at work, you are much better at your job.
Wow.
I believe that.
No kidding.
It took until 2025 for them to get that poll out.
I know, and I was thinking that this it really did blow people's minds, and I imagine it's so intuitive to both of you, but I wanted to start by asking what your friendship made possible for you in the workplace that you think wouldn't have been possible otherwise.
Well, I would have felt very alone, you know? It would have made me the only other gay cast member, so I would have felt like just another version of the outcast role I had been playing my whole life. Because, back then, there was a lot of attention on that, that I was the only out one. And meanwhile, Kate, my best friend, was having her slow coming out and realization in her own time simultaneously. So it was like I would have felt, kind of lost at sea without Kate. And probably vice versa, right, Kate?
Yeah, it ups the ante in the bravery. Not only just in acknowledging, realizing who you are, but also in the space of creating and within the work that we did. We were able to be creative and take risks and improvise and come up with ideas on the fly. And if they don't work, that's fine. We can do it in another take. But just to have that space, that involves trusting someone, knowing that they're going to pick up what you're putting down and vice versa, or they're not going to shy away from it. I think that maybe is what helped register with people who watch the show and still, feel connected to it, was that level of creative synergy.
What do you each love about working with the other?
Certain people say don't work with friends. I know sometimes people say that, don't mix business and friendship.
There's a lot of anxiety about that.
And I do understand that it can sort of shift the dynamic, and we can easily fall into things where we only discuss business things because there's so much to tackle. So it takes a conscious effort to find that balance. But I disagree with that theory. I like working with my friend. I think that we have a balance in terms of not being overly cautious and not being overly impulsive. And we find that common ground. And I think that builds a really strong base for ideas and execution, and realistically, how is this going to look in a few years? And we're always on the same page where we think, maybe we should step back from this and focus on that. And that kind of, again, relationship or that kind of synergy, it doesn't come into your life often. So when it does, appreciate it and use it.
And when we're not on the same page, or say we have the same goal in mind, but we have a completely different approach to getting there, like I always start with yes, and I have to get to a no, and Kate always starts with a no and has to get to a yes. Like, so we have to challenge each other and push each other to get through these like barriers we have in ourselves, Because I have a very hard time saying no. So I'm just like, I say yes to everything, and then we'll get very overwhelmed because we have too many things on our plate. And Kate's like, well, let's just say no. And I'm like,
It's a great word.
And Kate starts with a no and has to be pushed to be like, no, this can definitely happen. We just have to do A, B, C, D, and it's going to take this. And then she'll get to the yes. And it's just, I don't know, it's a funny thing, business, right? Because we never went into this consciously. Like even when we started our podcast, which I would say kind of launched this whole journey together in the world of business, it was just because we were like, we missed each other in the pandemic. So we're like, let's just have the same conversations we have on the phone. Let's just record them. And it turned out, we're here 5 years later and it has a life of its own, but it came out of just wanting to spend, be together still.
We do all of our work together now.
All of it.
We are so far on the side of the spectrum that it's a good idea to work with people you love, that it's hard for us to even think about the downside. I mean, boundaries aren't our strength.
Right. But trust is so important to have that.
We tried working with other people. It didn't work.
We missed each other.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give to people who are kind of contemplating this kind of a collaboration and they're nervous about the messiness of it or what could happen to the friendship? What coaching would you give them?
I would say first and foremost, you have to have an open line of communication. You can't be scared to have difficult conversations because those come up all the time. Or maybe you can be disappointed in one another, like, or somebody's slacking, or you have to be able to say, hey, friend,
Yeah.
you got to return that email. Or like not leave each other out to dry.
At the same time, just know that you're going to make mistakes and the other person is going to make mistakes and we're human and we're the most imperfect creatures and it's going to happen. But to Leisha's point, have that open line of communication. There has to be fundamentally trust. Like you have to trust the people that you're spending this amount of brain power and time and money and investments and whatever into this. Because if you don't trust them, you're going to hate your job.
To the conflict point or the friction point or navigating through those tough moments, did you have to learn how to do that? Or were you showing up with a certain amount of skill, at least one of you, going into this?
I would say we had some practice runs just in our friendship. Normally, like we've had to sit each other down before and say, hey, where'd you go? Or like, I feel like you haven't shown up for me in these ways. Or, we've had some practice runs, but business is different because it almost feels like you're in trouble if somebody says something.
But I think we learn a lot in the fly as well.
Yeah, we do.
We're not experts in this. We go off of our instincts. We go off our chemistry. We go off the moments of inspiration we have and we run with it. And are they all winners? Who knows? But we really do learn a lot on the fly. Like I learned something last week on the fly and it was because we were getting overloaded with things. And Leisha's like, I really need help in this one department. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll see if I can handle that. And it's an incessant learning experience, and I don't believe anyone ever really masters it. I think it's important to be with like-minded people at work. Like you want to like who you're working with, as you said, with this poll, because it'll enhance everything. Leisha and I just started working with two people that we sort of knew, but we're getting to know more, and they're fabulous. And it's like, oh, I could see them being friends because they're fascinating and they're fun and they're like-minded.
Well, the reason we're all going into work together is because we had a bunch of meetings together, and we all walked away every time going, oh, this could be really fun if we do this. Like, that's the reason to start this, because it's going to be hard and it's going to be years of work. So I better be doing it with people that I enjoy, because otherwise, what's the point at this age?
It seemed like there was something special about the early seasons of the L Word that made kind of high levels of creativity and risk-taking more possible.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think some of the top-down choices that, like what in our world we would describe as the leadership team, but the creators and producers and showrunners made, do you, in retrospect, you think that made that possible?
It certainly stems from how our showrunner, Eileen Chaikin, handled the structure of the show. She really gave us the reins. She certainly gave us power with the people we were playing, and she was open to ideas, and she wanted ideas, and she accepted those ideas, and if they were better than what she had in mind, she went with it. She just wanted the best possible story. And that certainly created a freedom and a collaboration to say, okay, let's take some risks.
Yeah, I think the secret sauce was Eileen knew that highlighting what was actually happening off screen would turn on-screen scenes into magic. So they watched these relationships blossoming, like who was hanging out with who decided to room together. We literally never stopped hanging out. That's the thing. So the writers and the producers would go out with us a lot, and they had all this insight into these real relationships.
So out with you, like after
All of it.
Yeah.
Out to dinner, out to clubs, out dancing.
Parties at someone's apartment.
We consistently saw each other, and they watched it, and they started incorporating these partnerships. Like they would partner us together. They would, put fight scenes in if they knew someone had it. It was really like...
Yeah, they played to the strengths of everyone.
And you don't find that a lot in television, and we've even worked together since on a different show where that can be a very threatening thing to someone because they want to control the narrative and they want to control what their ideas need to be reflected on screen, and it can't be... There's really no organic starting point. It's just, this is what I wrote, and this is how I'm going to cast it, and this is how... So, okay, now say the lines. And it's just a different... It's not bad. It's just a different approach. And I think the lightning in the bottle that we all witnessed back then, it was because of the realness.
And so the whole cast was living together in Vancouver, what you call gay camp. Is that the way to think about it?
Yes. Not all of us, but in different groups.
There were a few of us that always lived close by, and we made it a point to only have a block or a block and a half radius between us. And then there were other seasons where we would room together, depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, that's awesome. Francis and I were in the middle of reading your book, and ended up in this conversation about allyship. What was it like for you personally to have this, to have all of these, straight humans, for lack of a better word, be so committed to telling this story with grace and nuance and excellence?
I would say everyone took this job seriously because we knew it was the first of its kind. And I mean, I felt a personal dedication to getting it right, because I'm like, we got to show my community right. We got to do this right. But all the straight actresses were like, we have to get this right.
And even the people off camera that weren't part of the community, our producer and people in the different departments, everyone had the same agenda, which was let's make this and let's make it right. It felt like this is how it should be. It just brought together this feeling, and this sounds really corny because this word is overused a bit, but it really brought this feeling of family. Mm-hmm. And I think anyone who maybe showed up and felt a little uneasy once they got up there, realizing, oh, I have to do certain things. And I'm not saying there were, and I can't think of anyone specific, but I'm sure it happened once or twice within those 6 years. They didn't last long because that was not tolerated.
We were very protective of it.
Incredibly protective.
And you could always feel something was a little off, or
Yeah.
it just wasn't meshing.
How did that protectiveness manifest?
I think, like Kate said, if anybody didn't fit for certain reasons, that weren't benefiting the message or mission of the show, I don't think those people lasted very long. And I think because it was a sexual show, it's the reason we never got acknowledged for, in the world of Emmys, or, back then it was like, oh, if you had sex, you were just a different, but what we always kept a high expectation for anyone who came on to rise up to doing their best work and portraying our queer community the best way they could.
And the rules were embedded in the culture of the show.
It was just an unspoken rule. It was the energy you felt when you got up there. You just knew it. You have to do it, but guess what? So do I. So we're all in this together.
Hollywood, what we would call Hollywood from far away, and the studio system are not the heroes of the book. What do you think the industry is getting wrong right now?
I think they're so used to feeding the gay community crumbs and just figuring we're happy with that. like, here's a gay character here. Here's a like, okay, you need a lesbian kiss. Let me throw one over here. We can tell. It doesn't satisfy us. It's not enough. I think what they're getting wrong is basically ignoring this gigantic, beautiful TV and movie watching community and culture that is hungry for content that represents them and where they see themselves reflected on screen. And it's such a loyal audience. And I think they take advantage of that by just throwing us breadcrumbs. And I think if anybody is smart, they will make something much like the L Word or something similar where we can see these lives with these fully fleshed out characters.
Well, they're protagonists in their own story, and we haven't seen that since, and that is the problem with this business. You know, at times you can tell that they put on a veil saying, no, we really care. And it's like, well, I don't think you do, because if you did, there wouldn't just be that one character and you'd have more than one gay show. Although guess what? There are no gay shows right now. They're not showing up. And I think that's always been it has been the disappointment since we went off the air.
Yeah, it's even revisiting season 1, which has been so much fun. We were reflecting on this would be a novelty now, 20 years later. To put these stories up on the screen in this way, with these multidimensional lives, and queerness isn't a tragedy. It's just part of this storyline.
And that's really proven by watching this younger generation after generation, because there's a couple behind us now walking up to us in grocery stores going, I just started watching the L Word. It's both beautiful and sad because they're watching a dated show, but it still means so much because they have nothing else to watch.
It's also queerness as a metaphor of this universal search for belonging. So I think it's a very surface kind of analysis to be like, oh, there's all these queer kids running around and they have nothing to watch, right? When I think sure, that's part of the story, but the other part of the story is that the human arc, which you both have lived and have written about beautifully, of like confronting your difference and then confronting the implications for connection and belonging, and then wrestling the demons to the ground with your own bullshit, and then bringing your family along. Like that journey there's also something profoundly universal about that. I forget who said, everyone's coming out of some fucking closet, you know? And so, the power of these stories to kind of bring that to the surface in this literal way, I think has resonance way beyond, the queer community.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I feel like you are probably not the first person, but you understand exactly what we wanted to write about. So thank you for seeing that in our book.
I think the relatability that you were referring to is just being honest and being a human, and the mistakes, again, that we make and learning from those. And then also, in retrospect, looking back and saying, oh, I forgive myself, actually, for doing those things at that time. But that's what I knew. That's
how you survived. And that's how we're all surviving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or just growing up feeling like a monster and an outcast, like you said. Like that for me was I can still feel it sometimes today. I think it's something I'll live with for the rest of my life. And really why chosen family, and I know it's been appropriated so much by the straight world, but in our community, it can mean life or death. It can, to find your people really is kind of everything. And you don't always have to be from a broken home or it's like what happened to Kate and I. It's something that I cherish this relationship, and I will work on it for the rest of my life because it's that important to me.
I can't help but think about the ties to leadership. So I'm going to just bring it in a slightly different direction, but I want to run some ideas by you. First, we think about leadership is that leadership is the act of making other people better. First, as a result of our presence, but in a way that lasts into our absence.
Okay, got it.
When I look at the work that you've done, you did it you led in one another's presence, but look at what has happened in your absence. And so to me, this show, I couldn't help but hear all the parallels to a startup that has like reverberations around the world and across time. And so to me, it's a great act of leadership. So that's my first comment.
100%.
And then I'll tell you the second layer that we have on after that definition is that when you want to bring out the best in someone, we know there's 2 tricks to do it. And if you can do them both simultaneously, you get there. And I feel like you do it with each other and you did it with everybody on set, but I want to test it with you, which is that if I want to bring out the best in someone else, I want them to experience my high standards. I mean, you guys I'll use my own language, but ruthlessly high standards. If you don't fit, you're out. Like I love it. But you also have to simultaneously reveal deep devotion to the other person's success. And so we call it high standards and deep devotion. And we can say it easily, but it's actually quite difficult to do because usually when we set high standards, we shield people from our devotion. Or when we're really showing our devotion, we insidiously lower the standards. And so the great thing is when you can do both of them simultaneously, that's when you can bring out the best in one another. And so I was just drawing my diagrams as you were talking about each other and talking about what was going on the set. So I'd love to just hear your reaction to those thoughts.
Can I ask a question? Is this like a course you teach at Harvard? Did we just have a Harvard seminar? Because this is the closest
I'm signing up.
Honest, this is the closest I'm ever going to get to an Ivy League.
Yeah.
Oh, you just tell me it's your goal and it's not the closest you're going to get.
But truly, like, this is amazing.
Yeah. No, but this is what we teach.
Wow.
That's so interesting because let's say Kate and I we had a project together, and let's say Kate's not, by the way, this isn't true. I'm just so I understand, not reaching my expectation in that moment or
Purely
for that
hypothetically.
week. Purely. This never happens. No, I really am doing a hypothetical. It could be easy for one to just give up or just go, I can't, this is, either I have to go do this alone or this isn't.
Or let it slide and not achieve as much as you would have otherwise.
In the name of protecting the friendship.
It's actually in the name of love.
Or it would be the opposite, where we just grind on each other so hard to get the job done that all of the devotion has gone out the window.
That's exactly right.
And the humanity, because it's doing the to-do list. Did you do X, Y, and Z?
That's exactly right.
It's work. It's balance. I think it's
We've
a
been
level
through
of
both.
We've been through both, and it's a level of awareness that I know for me, I'll realize after the fact and say, okay, I can't have this keep carrying on that way because it's not going to serve either one of us or our relationship in any capacity any good. So I'm going to pivot, and that's my responsibility. And I trust that Leisha is going to meet me halfway.
But in the end, if you both win at what you're trying to achieve, my God, isn't that like the dream that you get to do it with your friend?
Nothing would personally make me happier than to see something that Leisha and I have. I mean, this book is a beautiful example of that. We poured our heart and soul and worked so hard on this book. But even past the book, to succeed with Leisha, because I know how much devotion and time and effort and love has been poured into whatever project it is we're working with, to see that shine and win, that alone is success.
Give us the top line on the lesson you learned from being on the show, do you think, in retrospect?
I learned that the world is a lot kinder than I thought it was. We were embraced in a way I'd never thought we would be. I was so used to gay people being hiding away in dark corners and small bars, and we would only come out once a year and like on Gay Pride Day, and then we'd all go hide again. And I just expected nobody to care or like it or spit on it or what. And when it became the success that it became, and people from all walks of life, straight, gay, it doesn't matter what country you were in or what, like how much they loved it and how universal like our stories really are. You know, because like you said, you can be an outcast. You don't have to be gay to be. There are so many ways that people hide, or reasons people hide away, that aren't necessarily about being gay. But it's a universal thing to feel that way, and I think like the acceptance kind of blew my mind.
Kate, what about you? How did Shane change you?
Well, I think Shane gave obviously a big permission slip to be as bold as possible. And I think I'm far more shy than she was, but I was given this permission slip to say, oh, I can go for it. And that obviously opened up my world in a way that I didn't expect. But at the same time, Shane came with a hindrance, which was everyone thought I was Shane. So there was this little problem where me myself sort of landed somewhere in the middle, right? And so it was challenging only because no matter what I said or did, that perception wasn't wavering.
Mm-hmm. You were still Shane. We were all attached
across the board, and yeah, like the people who knew me, and they'd always laugh and they'd be like, "My God!" And I'm like, "I know."
Well, you would just watch it happen to like a girl with all the hopes and dreams in her eyes, and you just slowly watch them like figure out who Kate really is, and like wants to stay home and watch 90210 on the couch, and she's like, "Huh?"
Yeah, and I just want to be myself, and then there's like this disappointment, and it's like I can't live up to that expectation. I just can't, because she's the opposite of who I am, right? Champagne problems, I understand.
That could break a girl's heart, though. I get it. Yeah.
But I like how that character was written to break boundaries, and maybe that's why she got the attention she did, because at that time there weren't female roles like that. And and I said it in the book, she really had, like, she was a sort of conceived as this male character, but in female form, and that was sort of unheard of in 2002 when we shot the pilot. And I'm glad that the character inspired others to find themselves, whether it was confidence or, I hate to say fashion, because there were some extreme mishaps that happened throughout the years. But I know that at the time it was the pinnacle. But I'm glad it helped others.
It holds up. We just watched the show. They weren't as dramatic as each of you recalled. Yeah.
But I'm glad I'm glad that character gave others gumption to be themselves. Yeah. Because at the same time, she was giving me the gumption to be myself. But I was just doing it privately. I wasn't. And that's such a gift, because television, it's such a powerful medium, and not every show is a hit, but this show landed, and for good reason.
One of the things that Ann and I try to do with our work is leave people, our greatest success measure is that if people have swagger as a result of interacting with us. Like that's what we're trying to leave in our wake. And I have learned a lot from watching you on screen and now talking with each other about how to unleash swagger in other people. So I want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Frances.
Amazing.
Thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
I was thinking, reading the book and then hearing their conversation, a lot about what these creative industries can teach the rest of us about how do you design workplaces where creativity is a reliable output. But I feel like there's not a lot of cross-pollination between these creative industries and everyone else. I think there's a lot for the rest of us to learn from people who wake up every day and have to literally create.
I feel like we take a lot of learnings from like the icon, from Pixar. Like the world learns from Pixar's creative engine.
Yeah, that's a case study that I think has broken through for sure.
But this, like what you only get to see by reading the book and hearing them, I think what they did and what, like I would like to see the show about behind the scenes what happened. But each thing they spoke about, like the showrunner, not giving them a script to be adhered to.
Yeah.
But giving them the script with then loose guidance, and then they would open to ideas. I mean, we hear this in organizations every day. I have never met a company that didn't say we want the best ideas to come from anywhere.
Right.
And yet, the organizational structure we put on top of it makes that less and less likely to happen. And here, the showrunner figured out how to do it. And then you got some operational gems for how they did it. The producers would go and spend time with them to observe where the alchemy was, right, and then build on that, right? Because you could try to create alchemy, or you could observe it and try to foster it.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
That, to me, is what I learned from them. There's so much more alchemy if you start with the alchemy. than if you try to foster alchemy among strangers.
That's what all the team building effort is all about. But it is a mindset shift to say, okay, where is this chemistry happening inside the company? Can we build from there?
I also loved how much they cared about standards and expectations of one another. Like there was a real sense of excellence.
Well, I think that's powerful too, is I think the institutional hesitation that you talked about, that, the friendship reduces the likelihood, or that like we have these implicit assumptions when, I mean, all the way back to this Gallup data, when if you look at the evidence, it's the opposite. And certainly it was for Leisha and Kate. Their friendship and commitment to each other as people facilitated keeping that bar high and rising in the work that they did together.
I know that most people shy away from working with people that are close to them, and I'm not in advocacy mode. I am so glad that they didn't shy away from working with each other, because there's been magic on the other side of it, and it's only going to continue to be magic.
I'm in advocacy mode. I want to say, work with your friends and loved ones. Try it. Pull back if it doesn't work, but give it a shot, because the things that you can accomplish together when there's that kind of an interpersonal commitment that is foundational to the relationship is orders of magnitude bigger than when that foundation isn't there.
Just one more example of how you're more courageous than I am.